Greetings, Duelists, and welcome to another deck report. So this is season 4, week number 12, and I'm back with Crystron again. So you're probably noticing that this deck report is happening a little bit earlier than usual. The number one reason for that is because there is another deck I want to showcase for this weekend, and I have been testing very thoroughly with it. However, I did play this at locals this week, and I still want to talk about this deck as well. The other thing I want to do is turn this episode into a prelude of another video I kind of want to make involving my thoughts and opinion on this particular format, because I've seen a lot of players talk about this format as a whole and talk about stuff that they like and dislike about it. And there is one thing that has been at the back of my mind for the past 5 weeks, and I haven't seen enough people talk about it, and I do want to talk about it. Yeah, it's one of the reasons I didn't do so well this past locals, and I won't go over detail in this video, but I will talk about it a little bit slightly in this video. But yeah, without further ado, let's begin. So, triple Tristaros, triple Tristivern, triple Smiger, double Sulfador, double Sulfenir, one C3, triple Undyne, one controller, triple Minstrel, triple Dragoon, double Poseidra, heavy infantry, Kaido. Triple Ash Blossom is my only monster hand trap. As for other hand traps, we have triple Infinite Impermanence, triple Dominance Impulse, as the last non-engine, we have triple Forbidden Droplets, and then Foliage Burial, triple Inclusion, and Cluster. And that's it for the main deck. I think it's 45 cards. Side deck: triple Solemn Strike, triple Evenly Mashed, triple Chaos Hunter, triple Lancea, triple Droll, and Lockbird. Extra deck: Arms of Genex, Sword Soul, Navy Dragonman, Chowfen, Quarian Gandrax, Samurai Destroyer, Don Dragster, Elasketas, Typhon, Infinity, Nova, SP, Coral Anemone, and Clockwork Knight. Alright, so if you guys have not seen this deck profile, I profiled that 3 weeks ago. I will most likely post it in the description of the channel. That way you are more in depth with what this deck is by watching that video. For those who already seen the past deck report involving that deck, I did make a few slight changes to it. Like, I bumped Poseidra to 2, I bumped Dragoons to 3, and I just didn't play talents this time in the main deck. I mainly wanted to experiment more with the non-engine and with the engine cards a little bit more. And I'm going to say I've only bricked once the entire tournament, and that game that I bricked I still feel like the game was not in a super commanding position. Now, it was against Ryziel, and my Ryziel opponent summoned Dweller, and they Dwellered plus Lancea to me in that game. And I'm gonna say this card is MVP of my extra deck. Against Ryziel board that they try to make to floodgate against your own board, this card is just really good because this card can pretty much, you can summon this, attempt to run over Dweller, and I know you're thinking, well, Typhon can, well, Detonator can just stop that. If you have a way of dealing with Ryziel Cross, you can bounce the Detonator, run over their Dweller, or their dual drive, and just try to control the game with your non-engine and hold yourself back another turn. That almost happened, but the number one reason I lost was, as opposed to other real breakers like Talents and like Dark Ruler and stuff like that, I chose Evenly Matched. And my reasoning behind Evenly Matched was that if they don't have specifically Artifact Lancea, this card threatens the entire Ryziel board. Against the Mitsurugi version, it's a little bit more complex because they do have the Purification Trap. But outside of that, against most Ryziel boards, and this card really just does a really good job, especially if you pair it up with Droll and Lockbird. If you pair this up with Droll, it means that if your opponent wants to commit their board into Detonator, into other interactions besides Detonator, they have to exhaust their hands, which means you get rid of their entire follow-up with this combination. Sadly, that did backfire because the one weakness to this attempt is Artifact Lancea, and you are playing a deck that is weak to Artifact Lancea, which means your opponent will most likely side it more than not. Shout out to Brian Velez. I think the play that he did against me was a bit overkill. He summoned a Dweller and he Dwellered plus Lancea. That could have easily gotten punished by other board breakers, but it did work out for him because the one board breaker that I chose to play is the one that loses to Artifact Lancea. But yeah, in the future, one PSA that I'm going to give is this card is really not that bad this format, especially against Ryziel. But you have to be playing a deck that does not lose to Artifact Lancea, otherwise your opponent will side Lancea against you, and the Lancea will stop this card from resolving. As I prefaced a little bit earlier, Typhon is really good right now. I think against Ryziel specifically, this card is really strong. Not so much against Malice, but at least against Ryziel, including the Mitsurugi version, this card is actually good. So that's it for explaining this. So what happened to me this past week and why did I choose this deck? The thing I like about Crystron is like trading interaction, like common interactions against your opponent, is very, very easy with this deck. This deck really doesn't suffer from like heavy engine syndrome where just your engine cards are not good enough for the format. Your engine cards are good. You can do decent trades with your opponent with this deck. The biggest issue with this deck, and the reason I think we didn't do well this weekend, is against there are silver bullet cards that really just stop you, especially this version of the deck. Against this version, 1-for-1 interactions mean almost nothing to you, but lingering effects like Lancea, Droll, Shifter, those cards do very well against this deck. All my losses this past week were to a lingering hand trap as well as two other hand traps, or one other hand trap and one board breaker. One game I lost because I got Lancea, Fualo, Surveillard, and I still played through all those three cards, but I got punished by Kurikara Divincarnate the turn after, which is an odd combination to be seen to begin with, but hey, it worked out for my opponent, so I can't say anything against that. Another game I lost was to the Dweller Lancea opponent, but it wasn't even Dweller Lancea that won him the game. It was, the fact that I sided in the wrong breaker against them, and outside of that, my hand was not great. But I can assure you right now, if this was a Lightning Storm or a Feather Duster, I might have still been in a good position that match, despite them Dweller Lancea me. And this card makes it all possible. So if you're playing Crystron, this card should be in your extra deck. The last loss that I had was against specifically Dimension Shifter plus Infinite Impermanence against Malice, and I'll be honest, the Shifter really didn't hurt that much. It was more so the Infinite Impermanence that they used for my limited interactions that I had available because of that Dimension Shifter, which again is not something I even going to fault my opponents for. But yeah, pretty much all those games were a little bit out of my control, and it is a little bit disappointing that you just lose games because of stuff like that. It's not much because of the skill that you have with this deck. It's much more because there are silver bullet cards that really just hurt this deck a lot, and people are citing it because they are popular this format. That's not to say that Crystron is not a bad choice this format. It's more that it's badly positioned in this current format. It's pretty similar to Ritual Beast, and the reason you haven't seen Ritual Beast in this channel on any deck report in the past 12 weeks is very similar to that. It's just a very similar problem. But yeah, I will talk more about my thoughts on the format on another video. But for now, I kind of just wanted to talk about my deck reports. I don't regret picking up this deck. This deck was... I don't regret playing this deck this past week. This deck is incredibly fun. Whenever I do get to play the game, it's pretty much in a really good, favorable position for me. And yeah, I do encourage you guys to try out the Atlantean version. It does have a few weaknesses, but it makes the deck very strong going first. Even going second is kind of okay because Poseidra is just a really strong boss monster that you can just summon. The synergy behind the Crystron cards and the Atlantean cards are really strong as well. And that's not to say that I don't like Atlantean Mermail. I think Atlantean Mermail is an okay deck this format. It's actually really, really strong. Like outside of the big three decks right now, which are Blue Eyes and Raziel and Malice, and then you have the Fiendsmith decks. Outside of those four decks, I think Atlantean Mermail is very, very, very close to the upper echelons between Rogue and the tier 1s. Same thing goes to Fire Kings and White Forest. But the problem with the Mermail cards is that they are very, very fragile. It's pretty much like a glass cannon type of deck where if you don't go first, you are struggling a lot. Where with Crystron, it's a little bit different because your engine trades against your opponent are very strong if there are no lingering cards involved. But yeah, that's it for this deck report. I hope you found this informative to your liking and understanding. Keep practicing and keep dueling.